Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. From last week's video, there has been several signals that have gone off. Some really important stuff that we need to update in today's video. One in particular is your 3-day signal. We're seeing something similar at the peak for BTC right now, but there is some good news underlying right here, right now. Make sure you hit that like button. We've got heaps to get through as we lead into the election as well. And subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Don't want you missing out on any of the day's analysis. Okay, let's kick it off with a couple of the major comments that came up from last week's video. One in particular is the 3-day down. This is the one that helped us call the March top and led to an almost 8-month grind between 50 and 70K. Would this mark the top? So let's just kick it off with that particular comment there. Now what I'm using is the Gann swing indicator. Guys, if you do have this, see this little purple thing here? There is an update. We've got some big updates coming your way and some have actually been rolled out right now. So if you need to do that, update to the latest version. I'll do that after this video just so I could show you there. Now, what we're doing is looking at the settings, going to show bar type, and then you have the grays and the red arrows right here on the particular bars. Now, if you're not using this, what we're looking for are 3 days in a row, and this applies to lows as well, with lower highs and lower lows. I still get tons of comments from people asking, is it now? Is it now? Because they're looking at red. No, just hear me now. It's lower highs, lower lows. Okay, so we got an inside day. That means that you had a higher low, but also a lower high. Then you had the day down, inside day, then another day down. So although this isn't exactly technically speaking the 3-day, it is something important to watch because we've seen basically a straight down move with no interruptions. No interruptions of the blue diamonds, which is an outside day, meaning you have a higher high and a lower low. From within that move, you don't have any of those blue days, or you don't have any up days within that movement either. So the market is still headed straight down from that point. Now, the silver lining here is slight bounce, holding above some of the key support levels so far. And if you are part of the free TIA community, you can find that right here. Just subscribe to the free crypto report. You'll get an email automated straight to your email and it'll say join TIA community. Michael has been updating that over here in greater detail. Now, the one thing I'll mention about this, and he's basically been updating every single day since he's been away, is that we're not in normal times right now. March, normal times. There was nothing major going on. There was no major volatility. What he's saying here is we have probably one of the biggest volatility events in the last 4 years. It's the US election. So this also needs to be taken into consideration when watching for this particular signal. Now I'm going to go into that in greater detail, especially with the S&P 500, just based on these particular times right now, obviously with the election, 2.5 days, right? It's Monday here, Sunday for you guys probably watching in the US and maybe even Europe. So that's what we're going to get to, basically looking at what happens before, what happens after. Now, just finishing up on the short-term BTC before I get into the longer-term stuff, the downside support, 66K for this region here, the low to the top. If we had to go back another support region, we go all the way back to the September low, that'll give us a support level of 63K. And just for the entire move up, I'm going to go back to the August low, and that's at 61. Do I think it's going to get there? I don't think so. I would be happy with anything down to around these previous tops, 64K. I'm not concerned. I know the market's concerned. I know I've had several comments from people being concerned and that I've disappeared. I take weekends. I take it off with my family. Maybe you do the same. But everyone wants an update. That's why I say get onto X and also Discord where we have easier time to update you. So that's BTC in the short term. Things are still looking pretty good. Now you may have seen this also on my charts from last week and the week before, looking at where tops come in, time frames, top to top, lows to lows. Bitcoin has done these pretty cyclical turns, roughly 4 weeks, 27 days, 28 days, 33 days, okay, slightly more, 32, 32, 31. Look at these turns, low to high, and then low to low, high to high. Sorry, this one here was a high to high as well. we have a high to another high, and they've caused movements in the market which might not look like much just staring at the chart. However, as you probably or hopefully been living through all of this, you know that these times were pretty emotional. Even these little movements here in Bitcoin going back into early October, they look little now compared to this. But everyone was getting pretty upset about these moves, saying that it's over. We are under 60K again. You said this, you said that. And then without notice, it just shoots right up. So they sort of shut up after that point because they've just missed out on another 20% move, 60K to 74K. So the idiots that keep getting really, really emotionally tied to this, I know we can all get emotionally tied, but the ones who sort of start to play the blame game rather than just focusing on the charts and getting themselves into positions, they're the idiots, right? Just keep focusing on your charts. Don't worry about getting into blame games, okay? So we have another high to high, 32 days. And we got the correction. So now I'm looking at these lows to the next lows. That's around the 9th. So maybe 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere around there, because we know the dates have been around 27 to an extension there of about 34. So where's 27? That'll take us out to a date of Wednesday, the 6th. So maybe we see a little bit of a move up, a dump down, and then we start to climb our way higher. That'll give us the shortest of the moves from looking at low to low. The longest, somewhere around 34 days, takes us out to Wednesday next week, which is a pretty long time for another low to come into the market. I'm not here to say one or the other. I'm just going to focus on the dates which have continued to work out thus far. So let's just keep an eye on the first one, which is basically the election day being Wednesday, because Bitcoin resets at UTC 0, which is basically Tuesday afternoon for the US guys, okay, which is basically the election, which is Wednesday on the chart here. So overall, nothing seems out of position as of yet in the short term for BTC. So I think we can cover off this question here, which I know has been a pretty big one for a lot, especially with that 3 days down. A quick one on this, which I'll look at later. This is a bit more for the longer term for BTC, you know, whether that top's coming in or not. I'll get to that in just a moment. And then also this one here, the lows at 17K, not 50K. So basically been on the way buying up from that point. So I'll have a look at that in just a moment as well. The next thing I want to look at is the macro overall. So for the stock markets, traditional markets, what are these smart money guys doing in particular? This one here is Warren Buffett. The reason for this is all the way up, we hear negative things, or at least how negative things can be positioned to tell us that the market must collapse, but it keeps going up. The short term, yeah, we've got some days down, but overall it's continuing to go higher and higher. This one has been in the forefront of people's minds, at least on media headlines now, for several years, at least what I can count back, and someone else could count back even further. Warren Buffett selling stock, selling Apple, halted his buybacks in his own company, built largest cash base. Yes, the dollars are obviously going to be the largest. Not having to go KBC letter here, puts out some information, some reasonable stuff there. The point I'm trying to make here is it's always going to be the largest balance because there's the largest amount of money in circulation in history. Okay, so these sort of things, he's not the only one, don't worry, it's not him, it's every other media outlet will say it like this. Built the largest cash balance, which makes it sound like, oh shit, I better be doing the same. I don't think that's the case right now. Of course, Warren Buffett runs a different ship to us, but the main point here is that it'll always be the largest something because you have the most amount of money in history. It can't be like the second largest or well, it could, but it's not going to be like one of the smallest and be a headline because there's so much money out there. Okay, next thing, he holds a record 288 billion treasuries. It means he's kind of hedging himself. Now he owns 93 billion more in treasury bills, halting the buyback. It basically thinks that it's overvalued. Sure. But he's also thought many other things were overvalued. And I said he's been doing this since 2020. What's the market done since that point? It's gone bloody up. Okay, why is Warren Buffett doing this? I don't know. He thinks it's overvalued. He's obviously building a cash base here. The thing is, if he goes to sell off big chunks, like you might want to sell 50 or 100% of your portfolio, you're not going to do shit to the market. Like you're not going to see any volatility unless you're playing with very small cap meme coins. But Buffett is going to wreck the market if he tries to sell off. So he needs to sell on the way up when there is good news. To me, that's the biggest thing. And then the other comment here is saying he's been doing this since about 2013, all the way up. He stopped aggressively entering the market back then. So he's aggressively buying at the bottom, and now he's not aggressively buying. Were you aggressively buying in 2009, 10, 11, 12? Probably not. And so we're sort of all buying now at the peaks or leading to the peaks, but looking at it in terms of a longer term time frame, you have the flexibility to get in and out quicker. Buffett does not. He does not have the flexibility to dump the majority of his position, because it will drastically affect the stock market. So that's the big one there. Whenever you see this Buffett thing come up, I just sort of push it to the side. I know it makes headlines all the time and it makes for great YouTube videos, but I don't give a shit about this. It just doesn't matter to my type of investing and to any other person who has less than several $1 billion. Okay, US election update. My thoughts here. You can go and read this on X if you wish. The main thing I'll lead to here is this and this. This does trigger people. It doesn't look like this US election will be a clear Trump win, which the markets are potentially pricing in now, which is why you're seeing some downside. I don't care who wins. What happens next is people say you're watching too much CNN, all this shit. I don't care. If you're getting triggered by my thoughts, you're either too emotionally tied to the outcome that you don't control, or are not reading it correctly. Either way, just focus on your own trading and investing, okay? So the main thing here is if Harris wins, dump a little, range, then pump. I think that's going to happen because there's still tons of money coming into the system. If Trump wins, you're probably not going to see the same sort of dump, probably some sort of pump and then pump some more. Both are still bullish, medium to long term. Both have the same end game, just a different path to get there, okay? So let's keep following this over the next couple of days. On some of the cycles, which I might have in today's video or tomorrow, there is a suggestion of a pullback from late November into mid-December. And then we resume the move up. With all of that in mind, you still see higher lows. Whoop. So focus on that. Higher lows, watch the charts. Next up, Seth, friend of the channel here, is talking about options in puts. Fall off a left tail risk. Left tail risk is no longer present. Look, this is all sort of jargon to me. So I've asked him, can you put this in English? Because I don't follow this stuff. I have my own analysis that I follow. And to many, my analysis is jargon to them as well. It's a different language to others. So what Seth has said is that it's overly hedged for election risk. Once election risk is removed this coming week, those options are deeper out of the money with each passing day. Force closure of options pushing down VIX, which we know means up for the S&P 500, which forces FOMO chasing even higher. Essentially saying, from what I can tell, there's not the money has been out of the market because they're hedging themselves, and then they're going to have to play catch up once the election is over and things become a bit more clear. Therefore, more money comes in and continues to pump, and then people chase, which then causes things to go up even higher. Also this week is the interest rate announcements. This has kind of gone, it's like radio silent. Remember at the beginning of the year, it was on and on and on, and people were talking about it over and over again, all these cuts that were coming. None of them came. I said it on the channel and on X. And the reason why I thought none of them were coming was because people talked about it way too much. It's kind of like the contrarian trade, but only when the contrarian trade is so crowded. So that's a good comment there from, well, a good name for it from Jason Shapiro, crowded market. And so it was so crowded then at the beginning of the year, everyone talking about it, expecting cuts. It didn't happen. We had to wait till September until it did. And now no one's talking about it, which to me seems either neutral or less crowded. Therefore, there is a much higher chance of it being cut. So this comes after the election, the 7th. So yeah, end of the week. Look out for another 50 basis point cut, which means, well, people have more money, or there could be more money in the system. And you might also see prices continue to increase from there. So here we are, S&P 500. I've got Bitcoin, I've got altcoins to get through, Solana, ETH, etc. We're just looking at the election day here. I have Wednesday, because that's where the chart starts again. Obviously Tuesday, you guys are out there voting. And then towards the end of that trading day, it closes and the new day opens for Wednesday. It opens on Tuesday afternoon. Things can get volatile. So what I'm looking at here is basically 4 weeks, 20 trading days, obviously 5 days a week, 4 weeks prior, 4 weeks after. Election day is here. Well, we're basically at the same point we were four weeks ago. slight move up, slight move down. I believe this has now occurred, the volatility and the 4 to 5 week volume fill as we have been tracking here on the channel. This volume wants to come out. We have this day right here. That's where the volume started to die off, right? And then price comes back and fills the gap. Who remembers me talking about this time and time again over the last few months? It was just something I looked up thinking, it seems to happen when you get this low volume, the market continues to rise, even lower volume, there's just not that support coming back. We've got the support, doesn't mean that that's the end, but we now have it. Okay, so we've got some area that it can start to base from. If not, maybe it comes down a little further, 50% level down there at 56.60. All right, then we can come all the way back to the yen trade and we have 5,500. The main thing I'll note here is, for now, it seems highly unlikely that this low will get taken out. So August low is not going to get taken out for this move. And, you know, maybe this one won't get taken out either. 5,400 points, that's the September low, the higher low. But yeah, look, I have my money on August low not getting taken out before we see higher prices. How's that? So 5,100 off the board. While editing, I realized at this point in the video, I didn't go through and look at all the history of each of the elections 4 weeks before, 4 weeks after. I'll leave that till tomorrow's video. So make sure you are subscribed and we'll go through that then. S&P 500 cycle composite for 2024. Bit of a correction into November. Some more November corrections, if I can see there correctly. And away we go to the end of the year. Basically, volatility end of year should close higher than the beginning of the year, and most likely, at least according to these, should close higher than any of this section here through quarter 3. So quarter 4 should close higher than quarter 3. Last piece here for the macro before I get onto Bitcoin, you know the deal, winner's curse. It's the 18.6 year cycle. We're in the final leg of it now. We're in the second half of the 18-year cycle. This is where we're at in the winner's curse. Things continue to go up, but the volatility becomes greater, meaning this. Before it was like this and we're climbing, and now it's like everyone getting emotionally attached to these big moves, typically, which you would know, and I know, is because they have more money in the markets. People are putting money in and they're doing it later in the game, which I hope understand. This is much later in the game than doing it in 2020, doing it in 2015 at this low, doing it here 2010 and 2011, or obviously the bottom at 2009. And so when you have the retail and more highly emotional people coming to the market, you're going to see those swings, or at least you're going to see a lot more of the headlines and people becoming more emotionally attached to their money. Which leads us to BTC. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to Michael's channel as well. He was the one that did the back testing on ETFs. You've seen me do this. You've seen us look at the ETFs here with peaks. And what tends to happen is people come out of all places, YouTube, X, check out these ETF flows, watch them go higher. I did a video on it last week, basically trying to prepare you for any of, I guess, the grifters is what they call them online, that spruik these sorts of movements. Wow, lots of people coming in and buying. And it's basically been tops since its inception. Michael did the back testing and found somewhere around those peaks, like here in July, it went a little higher, but it didn't close above it, and then eventually led to a pretty big fall. And then again, there was another top here, didn't crash the next day, held out for a couple of days, and then crashed. And then again, top, held out for a couple of days, then crashed. And again, we're at this peak, and it's come down about 10%. So it's not trying to call that this is the end and then a massive dump. It's just trying to show that every time, or almost every time, enough to suggest that you're best being on the side of the probabilities, that when these things come out, when people go to Bitcoin ETF flows and tell you, wow, look how many people are coming into the market, probably you don't want to follow the crowd. It's pretty simple, right? You don't want to be part of the herd getting led to the slaughter. It's like a slaughter device, this. ETF flows, it's all coming in. Check out the net flows. Look how much is in. Bam, get slaughtered every flipping time, or almost every flipping time. So Bitcoin on the weekly. Now, this isn't the greatest bar that you want to see. Obviously, we just talked about ETF flows and people getting shat on. We've also seen some pretty high liquidations, and Michael will go into that on his channel as well. Link in the video description, as I said, using the liquidations as a signal to resetting market sentiment. Basically, all of these leveraged longs that got crazy long thinking this is it, this is the time we're all going to 80, 100K, sort of get squashed out of the market. So that's a good thing. That's what you want to see. In terms of the correction, as I said earlier, 66K, next is 63K, and then around 61 there. So just depending on which exchange you're on. The point of that is any sort of movements to the downside over this next sort of volatile period over the next few days is still going to be okay, meaning that it hasn't broken any of the structure in this pattern itself. Now I've got a note here. This time is different. This exact thing worked out, which is crazy. I like to more or less see things rhyme as opposed to repeating, but here we are. Here's the rhyme. 1, 2, 3 weeks up from this swing low, the fourth time there, 1, 2, 3, we're into this fourth week. Last time it did break out and just kept going. This time had a bit of a pause here, no swing back down yet, but I would say that this is a rhyme as opposed to it being absolutely different, you know, in terms of a major collapse. At least that's what the chart says for now. So just so it's nice and clear, a breakdown of this low here around 59 to that 50% level, so 59K to 61K, that is going to be a cause for concern. Things under there, closes under that point, could either mean A, we do have a lot longer to wait now until we start to see the market run higher, or B, the cycle's over. So that is going to be a very critical level to watch out for. Anything to that point is either slow down in the move, so underneath these tops at around 65K, closes under there would be a slowdown, but still above 61, not a huge concern. And anything staying above around 65, 66 is actually quite strong. So basically a flush out, consolidation above those levels. If that happens, right, that is much, much stronger. And then you'd start to see this thing head higher. So over to the true altcoin market cap, excluding stable coins, ETH and Bitcoin. And we have the election coming up this week. We have another little top in play here at around 480 billion, down week last week, 50% level sitting around 380 to 400 billion. What does that mean? Well, that's the August low to those current tops that are about, 480, 490 billion. And that level right there, you can see it across the screen there, 400 billion. So anything underneath those levels, that's going to be a lot more weakness to altcoins. However, we know altcoins do move more so than Bitcoin, meaning there's more volatility to the downside. And the next levels of support back around these lows at about 360. So a couple of levels that will keep it in a bullish structure, if you will, and continue to potentially grind higher as we lead into the end of the year. 360, worst case scenario, best case, some support there around 380 to 400 billion. In terms of timing, like we've looked at, around 100 or so weeks was the last cycle. So low to the breakout point around the election, like last time. That leads us around 4 weeks out from that current end timing, all the way to about 8 weeks out. So here is the 8th week. There is our reading starting Q1 of 2025. So anywhere over the next sort of 1 to 2 months could lead to that reversal and the move up. But for now, probably going to keep getting squashed with the alt BTC pairs. But to me, it's not the end of the world. So it just depends on where you want to be buying these things. You've got Sol USD. It's come back, tested the $158, which is basically the 50% level. A little bit of extra volume coming in here, but still need to continue to see closes above these tops. So 162 and about 162. And what did it do? It closed at 162.40. So there is some slight bullishness in that short term coming in, but it still needs to swing back up. You still need to see these daily swings confirm an uptrend again, because right now you have higher highs, lower lows. That is undecided. We don't have a clear uptrend at the moment. Good news as well is the volume increased on the way up and decreased on the way down. So it seems like less selling out of the market for that period. As I said, still got to wait for those confirmations. But if you are wanting to get in on any of these sort of dips rather than waiting for the confirmation, which is much higher risk and can go against you more often than waiting for confirmation, which means you must have stops in play in case it goes down lower. Well, then you can get into those positions now when everyone else is sort of freaking out. Do recall, possibly 4 to 8 weeks. You have to like sit through the market, getting crapped on by the market. As an example, you can go back to Solana last cycle, and this thing kept getting crapped on all the way. There is the election through this period, November, and then it kept getting crapped on down and down and down into December before it just took off, took everyone by surprise and just shot right up. So if you can fathom a range, volatility, wild swings, there's another 60% swing just in that little movement there, then this is the game for you right now. If you can't, then I would highly suggest waiting for some confirmation to the upside here. Sol BTC, let's have a look at that, is at 2360 and is still above the trend lines. It did get rejected again at the 50% level. So important, these 50% levels. We're just waiting on more confirmation to see if it can turn around. Good news, increased volume to the upside, decreasing volume to the downside. So provided it holds up at 0.0022 around that level, well, then you've got another low potentially forming before it starts to work its way higher. As we know from the true altcoin market cap, 4 to 8 weeks is a reasonable amount of time. So I'm not holding my breath. I'd prefer to play, in some cases, the confirmation game when the trend resumes, but got to be pretty snappy on that. Sol ETH broke out to new highs last week, has rejected from that point for now, but is still above the highs. So provided this remains above those tops, well, you still have a stronger Sol position over this next stage. If Sol breaks down and closes under these levels, that would begin to signal that ETH could be getting stronger than Sol. So pay attention to this right now. That leads us to ETH on the ETH USD chart. Still barely holding in there, but it is higher highs, well, just in times, but higher lows. It does have the level there at about $2,200 to $2,300 that could hold up support. You just got to keep watching these levels. It has continued to work since that August low. A breakdown of that, well, then you can send ETH all the way back down to the next previous lows and the tops there about $1,900. And finally, ETH BTC basically confirms a similar reading as the true altcoin market cap. You can see it's continued to head down, ETH versus BTC. There is the next point there for the next weekly chart in the next week or two. Another low point about 0.03, so about 3% for ETH versus BTC. And in terms of the high to the low, that comes out about 184 weeks, high to low, which sends us somewhere around the end of November. So things are still lining up for that same move, grind down for the altcoins. You got to decide whether you can handle that volatility over the next 1 to 2 months on alts, getting destroyed, but then potentially turning around quite quickly like they've done in the past. Otherwise, probably keep it a little more safe with Bitcoin and stops underneath those levels. Apart from that, I've got heaps more to get through in the videos this week, obviously leading into the election. So stick around, like, subscribe. I've got a pinned comment down there with a question to you guys. And I'll see you at the next video. Until then, take care and peace out.